in the first stages of second attention, when the second attention begins to become direct, one begins to have the capacity to see beyond the senses. In other words, you can perceive directly into because you begin to have, your meditation begins to penetrate into the sphere of your own being. You can perceive directly your own subtle physical body. When you can perceive directly your own subtle physical body, you can see the subtle physical body of the world. You can see the subtle physical body of others. When you can see your own subtle physical body, you can see the seeds of your own klesha-born activity and begin to eliminate it systematically by using dispassion in the elimination of desires and detachment. The understanding that the fruit of your karma, however affecting your mind subtly, is not your identity. The mind is a formless vortex of light that reflects what it comes in contact with. If it's flooded with klesha-born content, then the mind will reflect that klesha-born content. But at a given moment, if you take that snapshot of your own mind and you experience upheaval of emotions, subtle desires, and all these subtle forces of klesha-born proliferating activity subconsciously asserting itself on the mind, it's very easy to make the mistake that you're thinking that is your mind, when the klesha-born activity is the same relationship of the clouds to the empty sky, constantly shifting around and changing their configuration. But they are not the mind. They are the content of the mind, and there is a very important difference. Most people think that they are the content of their own minds. You come to a meditation class, the teacher says, sit down, meditate, watch your breath, and what is the first thing you see? The content of your mind. All your klesha-born activity, all your emotions, your desires, etc., and you go, great. All I see is all my stuff. And the teacher always invariably says, keep meditating. Because it's very important that you understand this. Yes, you've existed for thousands of incarnations. And when I say klesha-born activity, klesha-born proliferating obscuration, what I'm talking about are the seeds of all of the causation and its resultant effect are subtly stored inside your form, stored inside your subtle physical body, stored inside your mental body. It's like a perfect record. It's a perfect record. But in all that time, you never just went in and filed everything. It's all just still floating around there in general. And it is the process of meditation where one begins the systematic elimination of all of that stored data, all of that klesha-born content. Now you subtly take possession of it. What we call the ego is the belief that your experiences is yourself. It's a false refuge, and you've made a fundamental error. That the content of your mind is your mind. The mind is so subtle, it's just a wave of consciousness. So subtle that, a single reflex of emotion, of desire, of attachment, any of those forms of projection of self will leave a very powerful trail inside your own mind. And when you look inside your mind, you will see it there. Oftentimes, we understand in spiritual life, that there are very intense poisonous forms of activity. All activity that is connected to greed, to lust, to anger, to hatred, to jealousy, are negative forms of activity. And there's two levels of resistance to them. The first, when you begin training, they said, do not give rise to greed, do not give rise to lust, do not give rise to fear, attachment, jealousy. And the first modality is just sheer resistance. When you see it come up, you say, no, I'm not going to act in this way. Oftentimes it's harder than it seems because these are deep primal energies operating in very negative patterns. And so oftentimes the first cure is one of the application of opposites. Feeling jealousy, apply love or generosity. Feeling greed, apply generosity. Feeling anger, apply love, etc. And that's enough to get you started. But you also have to meditate to begin to see where these seeds lead to. And we begin filtering them out. It is the energy of pure perception, the power of meditation, that releases the seeds. Once a dream object has been perceived, it will be dissolved. So meditation in the first and forms of cognition, basic and real cognition, has a lot of contemplation and concentration, discrimination in it. And you are debugging, defragging your mental field. Now, in first attention, it is a one-for-one relationship. The field of sense, the organ of sense and its object, cycling into the brain, producing an engram of experience, being stored in memory and being associated with every experience that was anything even remotely like it. And from that, we generate inference and make choices about our life. As we begin into real cognition, we begin to deal with subtle discernment. In other words, we begin to see beneath the subject. We've had enough experience to be, if we see one thing on the surface, we know 100 things that aren't seen, just because we can discern it subtly through the powers of intuition, concentration, etc.